What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king. Today, I come with a sense of righteous anger, because that worked so well the last time I did this. No, I've actually scripted my thoughts this time. I also think that this time in particular, most people are going to be behind me on this subject matter, especially in light of recent events. But for me, personally, this isn't just about recent events, but rather is a sort of contempt that has built up over years and years of frustration and disgust. And that hatred, that vitriol is aimed squarely at Electronic Arts, the company I despise more than any other in all of video games. Now, I'm not here to say that Electronic Arts is objectively the worst or anything. I mean, look at the way Konami treats its employees and customers. Look at the way Activision dips into just about every sleazy scheme in the book. And look at the way Ubisoft does most things EA and Activision do while also producing nothing but crap outside of a couple Rayman games for the last several years. Of course, I'm being a little facetious, but you get it. I can't definitively say EA is the worst company, but it's the one I hate the most. And Star Wars Battlefront is a great reason why. I'm going to give you a little bit of history, a little personal history. Flashback to 2006. I was 12. Coming up on my 13th birthday, and I had decided to treat myself with my own cash that I had saved up from mowing lawns, doing chores for the neighbors, etc. to get myself a PlayStation 2. My first ever console that was mine and mine alone. I had a Nintendo 64 and a GameCube before this, but the PlayStation 2 was mine, and it was such a uniquely satisfying experience to have bought a console for myself back then. After months of saving up, the first thing I bought with it? Star Wars Battlefront 2. Before I had even gotten a memory card to save my data. That was the first thing I wanted, and boy did I play the heck out of that game. And for almost a year, it was all I had. I put hundreds, possibly even thousands of hours into the instant action mode, playing every map and every conceivable scenario. I know I haven't spoken about this game much on my channel, and I'll probably do so more in the future, but for now, just know that Battlefront 2 was instrumental in shaping my formative years as a gamer. I got a few other games that were staples in that period of my life, such as Midnight Club 3, but one of the next big series of games I got was the Medal of Honor Trilogy Pack, which included Medal of Honor Frontline, Medal of Honor Rising Sun, and Medal of Honor European Assault. And I think it's safe to say most people that have come across my channel already know how I feel about those games. These four shooters, the Medal of Honor games and Star Wars Battlefront, made up half a decade of my life before I eventually moved on to the PlayStation 3. And you want to know what all these shooters have in common? Every single one of them was a property of Electronic friggin' Arts. And okay, I know, Battlefront is a technicality. It wasn't owned by EA back then, but it was made by Pandemic, who became an EA subsidiary not 3 years later, and yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. Basically, Electronic Arts owned a lot of my childhood. I also played a lot of their sports games, but I mean, back then, who didn't? Here's a few more games I played that were developed by EA properties. The Neighborhood, Sim Coaster, NBA Street, Sim City, those licensed Lord of the Rings games that were actually good. And even now, in 2017, recent titles I loved, such as Titanfall 2 and Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2, games I maintain are arguably some of the best this generation has ever gotten, and every single game I have mentioned thus far has been either systematically killed, or at the very least, is being strangled as we speak by Electronic Arts. DreamWorks, which went on to be Danger Close, was responsible for the Neighborhood and all of the Medal of Honor games. Gone. Pandemic made both Battlefront games before going on to work for Electronic Arts. Dead. Sim Coaster was one of the last projects by Bullfrog, one of the most influential PC developers in the earlier days of PC gaming and the beginning of Peter Molyneux's career. Closed. The creators of Command & Conquer, dismantled. Ultima, rest in peace. Skate, goodbye. Dungeon Keeper, buried. Dead Space, gone too soon. And now Titanfall, from the team that started Call of Duty. You know, back when it was actually good. The team that turned it into the biggest console franchise of all time, and made it what it is before being unceremoniously shunted away to make its own series. The developer that produced Titanfall 2, one of the best first-person shooters I have ever played, is now at the mercy of this horrible publisher. And damn it, EA, I hate you. I hate everything you stand for. I hate what you have done to this industry and continues to do on a regular basis. EA picked up the rights to Battlefront a few years back. I was genuinely excited. One of my favorite series ever was coming back to video games. And what did Electronic Arts do to it? Made it the absolute pinnacle of anti-consumer garbage that was running rampant in 2015. A shell of a game where you paid $60 to be able to do next to nothing. It couldn't actually do anything unless you paid another $50 to unlock the rest of the game at a later, undisclosed, undetermined date. completely tainted a series that I loved. And just when they were poised to do that again in the sequel, they do it again in the sequel. Same crap, different story. Now it's loot boxes, but the worst kind of loot boxes. Loot boxes so bad, even Middle-earth's Shadow of War is recoiling in disgust because while that game was also pay to win, at least it wasn't pay to win in a way that largely affected other players. Star Wars Battlefront was one of my all-time favorite games, but what it is now is a joke. And that's just me. EA has done this to countless other series, and it never, ever learns. It never stops. It is led by the most out-of-touch, short-sighted, misguided executives I've ever seen or heard of in my life. Pardon my language, because I've been trying to keep it to a minimum in this video, but how the fuck did you, yes you, whoever the hell you are that's calling any sort of shots at this train wreck of a corporation, ever get to where you are now while having such a feeble, pathetic excuse for a brain? You have literally never learned all these years later. You let these companies make their games for a bit, and the second you try to maximize profit, the second you stick your grubby little fingers on any of the products you hold the rights to, you destroy them. And then you use the developer who acts as the middleman as a punching bag. And when they're bloodied and bruised to the point of disrepair, you toss them to the side and move on to the next poor sap. Fuck you, EA. Fuck you from the absolute bottom of my heart. It's a relief that a good chunk of the video game industry isn't like you, because if they were, video games would be dead. You are a massive plague, and I hope you get what's coming to you someday. Electronic Arts, everybody, the King Midas of video games, except everything that they touch instead turns to shit.